Take it home where you spread it around. If you don't like who's in there, vote them out. That's what election day is all about. And the biggest gun we got is called the ballot box. If you don't like who's in there, vote them out. Vote them out. Vote them out. And when they're gone, we'll sing and dance and shout. And she'll bring some new ones in, and they will start the show again. And if you don't like who's in there, vote them out. It's a bunch of clowns you voted in. Election day is coming around again. And if you don't like it now, you can change it anyhow. And if you don't like who's in there, vote them out. Vote them out. Vote them out. And when they're gone, we'll sing and dance and shout. We'll start the show again and bring some new ones in. And if you don't like who's in there, vote them out. Vote them out. Vote them out. And when we're done, we'll sing and dance and shout. Then we'll bring some new ones in, and we'll start the show again. But if you don't like who's in there, vote them out. And if you don't like who's in there, vote them out. Thank you, Austin. Thank you, Texas. Thank you, Beto. All the way, buddy. We love y'all. Thank you.
On the 15th of January, 2019, the title of our episode, Representative King of Iowa. Representative King of the known races that has occupied one of the congressional districts in Iowa is now at a point that the Republican leadership is setting in motion an operation to strip him of various committee assignments that he is assigned to. And of course there have been calls for his resignation. If we recall, this goes back many years to our own Adam Clayton Powell. Adam Clayton Powell represented Harlem. He was stripped of chairs that he, at that time, was a part of, including the Health and Education Committee, which is a very powerful committee. Adam Powell wrote much of the progressive legislation that is now embedded in the Department of Education and Health, their charter there. And they expelled him from Congress, but the Supreme Court ruled that he was illegally expelled. Now, they're not expelling King. They're just stripping him of chairmanships and committee assignments. Now, the parties that are one, whether it be the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, they're the ones that assign members to committees, whether they are chairs of the committee, ranking members, etc. So now King is at the crosshairs of that political situation. The government shutdown continues on. DJ Trump has said, basically, as LBJ would say, he will continue with the shutdown until the proverbial cows, goats, or whatever else comes home. So this thing will go on and on and on. How will it be broken? Well, there's a possibility. Trump has tried everything, including a way around some of the Democrats by getting newly elected Democrats from more conservative districts to go along with this scheme. But the most recent polling has shown that the public is not as enthusiastic about this wall as they once were. but they're not at a point, at least at this juncture, where he's in political danger or damage. Now, there are other things swirling around, like reports that Trump was entangled with the Russian Federation as an asset. We doubt that very seriously. Again, that is he may be entangled, but not as an asset. Those kinds of things are rumors put out there, and so far, they have not had any currency. The most recent polls we've seen, we'll get to one in just a minute here, that a majority of the American public is not in favor of impeaching DJ Trump at this time. Now, could that change in the future? Possibly and possibly not. We at this mic have always been a bit dubious of that process because there are other things swirling around. The Mueller investigation is going. The report there, how will it influence people? Well, basically speaking, the way the nation is polarized, the number to look at it, will 40% of the people believe it. If 35% of the people believe it, it's still doable for DJ Trump. If it goes below 30%, that's the way our models see it, from 30 to 25%, particularly below 25%, DJ Trump is in trouble politically. Now, these are a lot of little things swirling around here, loose ends, and they could all come together. It's sort of like molecules. There could be a critical mass of very, very small things, including this shutdown. What the shutdown does is it brings about grassroots political action, and this has always been the way that we have to look at as grassroots political action. As some will say, and we'll get to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in a minute, and her new embodiment of the Democratic Party. That is one person that the corporate media likes to focus on. But the situation for DJ Trump and the Republican Party and these right-wingers is grassroots action. The more you see of it. In Los Angeles, they have a teacher strike now going on in Los Angeles. There are other work actions going on. There is a blue flu, or what do you want to call it, call in sick with the security agents at airports, TSA. And there's also the inability of various airline corporations, including Boeing's. There's paperwork you have to get before you can deploy a new airline, and there's no one to do that. So in other words, as this thing goes on, it becomes more of a smorgasbord, Swiss cheese type operation, and that's what we are beginning to see now. They have to make exception after exception. And we'll go to the Washington Post and talk about the small government people, no government, less government people in the Trump administration. There are roughly 17,000 government workers that are government positions for government workers, we should say, that have disappeared under the Trump administration. The idea is smaller government. Well, the problem there is you have an imbalanced situation. That you have the corporations which are advantaged, but at the same time they are on less than, as they say, stellar grounds. So if you put all your eggs in the corporate basket, that stocks or equities will go up. There's evidently someone that's decided to short some equities, as Buffett did 10 years ago. That's going to be an interesting situation. But there are those kinds of situations going on. Plus, globally, the economy in many, many countries have slowed down. If you have an opportunity, check us out on the Numbers Man Show, as it's euphemistically called, This Week in Economics. It's part of WBRNRadio and the Boston Red Network. And we talk about those factors that are coming up. What we'll do in this show is we'll talk about some polling, then we'll talk about Stephen King and why historically this is a new position and how it impacts on some of the antics of DJ Trump and his disparaging remarks about Wounded Knee, which was a holocaust of Aboriginal and Native American peoples by the U.S. military. And these are the little loose ends that all start to add up. And that's what we're seeing more and more every day. Let's go firstly to a CNN poll. This is was conducted for them by SSRS, an independent research association or organization from January 10th to January 11th, a sample of 840 respondents. And the sampling error is 4.1 at 95% competency. It was released on Sunday, and we look at the approval ratings of DJ Trump. This is on the latest one. He is at 37% approval, 57% disapproval, 7% had no opinions at all. In early December, December 6th through 9th, 2018, he was at 39% and 52% disapproval rating there at CNN. So he's been in the high 30s, low 40s throughout, and we look back to January 31st to February of 2017, as far back as they go, he was at 44% at that time. So that, I believe, is his... 45% in March. But anyway, that is where he is. Would you favor or oppose building a wall? And then we're talking about the DJ Trump wall for the entire Mexico border. 39% in this poll favor it, and 56% oppose it. And we go to December, the first week in December, 6th through 9th, or maybe the second week. It was 38%, so this has kind of went up and down. The highest number on the DJ Trump, was in January. 38% were in favor. Now, we go back to September 4th through 8th of 2015. Question prior, okay. Would you favor or oppose building a fence along the entire, anyway, there were 52% that were in favor of a fence and 47% opposed it, and that was in 2015. So you can basically see where they are in terms of this wall. Would you favor or oppose each of the following? Building a fence along the 2000 border. Now, this was in 2006, 45%, 50% opposed it. Now we go to who do you think is responsible for the government shutdown. 55% DJ Trump himself in this poll, and 32% the Democrats. And 9% both. Who do you think was responsible for the recent shutdown? Now, this was in 2013, 34% Barack Obama, the president at the time, and Congress 52%. So you can see some trends going on here if you look, and that was a Republican Congress. Republican Congresses have not done very well, and if we look at some of this historical data here in September of 2013, 36% blamed President Barack Obama, and 46% blamed the Republican Congress at the time. And we go back to 2011, 37%, a little higher number, 1% higher, blamed President Obama, and 46% the Republican Congress. So historically, the Republican Congress have not done very well on these shutdowns. Thinking about the current situation at the border between the U.S. and Mexico, do you consider the situation at the border to be critical or not? 45% said yes, it's a crisis. and 52% say no, and 4% had no opinion at all. Do you think the building a wall across the entire border would make the crisis worse? Not effective at all. Help solve the problem? 69%. Make the crisis worse? 17%. And we'll go down. Oh, this is a methodology. Maybe this is the end of our little poll here. It appears, this is just the side tables. We won't go into the side tables. What we will do here is, we'll get back to the Mickey D's menu in a minute, is look at some of the other polling while we're doing polling here. What the polling does is give you a snapshot of what is going on, an approximation at any given time that the poll is taken. And that's one thing to be remembered. It's not the final word. But if you start looking at trends, now this is one of the polls that we see as a very good poll from the Independent Business Daily. It has DJ Trump at a 42% approval and 54% disapproval. We gave you the CNN. I noticed also here that Rasmussen has dropped. That's one poll we normally don't bring in. He's at 43% there. He was as high as 47, 48% with the Rasmussen poll is on the 14th. That was on Monday. On the 9th PP out of North Carolina. But this is actually let's see if we can get. Well, Reuters had him at 40% at that particular time. So in other words, what the polling is basically saying is it has really not changed very much as far as where DJ Trump is or where DJ Trump is not. Let's deal with, this is in the Washington Post. The shutdown is giving some Trump advisors what they long wanted, smaller government. Well, if you have smaller government, you can have smaller government both on a practical range and on a theoretical range, but the problem is you will lessen your government services. And in a modern industrial economy, if you look at other nations in the world, they are expanding their governmental services. And there are a number of ways of doing this, increasing the services and also at the same time streamlining services where people can use mobile devices and other devices to put in applications for these services and use various kinds of analytics to move the process along. In other words, someone that is applying for health care insurance, Medicaid or whatever, they just simply can apply online, and the program, the analytics in the program, the algorithm, we could immediately check out their income possibilities via the IRS, via other kinds of things, in about 1 minute. Anyway, back to Trump. The shuttering of the federal government is a standoff of his plan to build a wall. That's partially bogus. And this is one of the, we talked about side issues is coming to be much, much clearer. Prominent advisors to the president to have forged their political career relentlessly in pursuit of a lean federal government and reining in the bureaucracy. And obviously the idea there is you rein in the bureaucracy, then the various federal agencies that have oversight over the water, the air, the food, etc., the safety net, dealing with discriminatory activities cannot do their job because they do not have the people. As a result, they've shown a high tolerance for keeping large swaths of government dock services offline and 80,000 federal workers without pay. And that is Mulvaney there, and this kook that we talked about in another episode named Vaughn, as well as leaders of the so-called Freedom Caucus. This is just a scam, is all it is. Mulvaney is not rattled by the fallout. Instead, he has been focused on protecting Trump from criticism. Now, these other characters here, Meadows of North Carolina and Jordan is out of Ohio, in the Midwest there, top allies of the president, no doubt about it. But beyond the just so-called kooky caucus here, you have this 80% of the Republican Party that is supporting DJ Trump in the shutdown. This has to be brought out. They have to go with whatever happens. The shutdown is a means to an end for something they have long pursued, and which is limiting the size, scope, and role of government. And that is from Kurt Bredella, former staff member of the Freedom Caucus. He became a Democrat in 2017. Conservatives for decades have questioned the size and effectiveness of the bureaucracy. That is one of the things, but that's serving the interests. And we have old, Grover Norquist here. Do you notice what percentage of these agencies were viewed as non-essential? The moment when people say, anyway, and from the racist, actually fascist, Bannon called a shutdown brute force measures that certainly show what is essential and what is not. Well, I hate to tell Bannon, many of the things are essential, and about 125,000 workers are working without pay. Now, this cannot go on because these workers have to have the means by which to feed themselves to even appear at work. If they don't get the proper nutrition, they are not able to work. They will be sleeping at their desks. I'm not sure how they were getting to work, but this whole situation will cause problems. An additional 350,000 are on furlough. Both groups expected to get back pay when the government reopens. But that is a long way there. Are these people getting tied me over loans? It is inconvenient that they're not getting paid. That's from Barry Bennett. He's a former Trump campaign manager, advisor. But it's for time they may not be going to office. Yeah. So they sit at home and starve. Trump evidently is on phased about it, leaving the government dormant. Doesn't matter to him. On Sunday, he reinforced his downplaying of the shutdown effect, tweeting the damage to our country from a broken border, drug cartels. It just obviously just not in touch with reality. The closure of 10 cabinet agencies and dozens of small ones had rattled many Americans and curtailed services such as food safety and low-income loans. As the federal courts run out of money to operate on Friday, the Coast Guard missed its first paychecks. Airports have been closing terminals because of the baggage screen are at home, conserving their meager resources, no doubt about it. Old Mulvaney joked last year, brief shutdown, but he'd been accused by critics of being an arsonist of government. Shut it. Vice President Pence, then an Indiana Congress type, said at a Tea Party rally. These people have always been in favor of curtailing as much government as possible, and this will be ultimately the winning point here. Either the right wingers will prevail by leaving the government shut down until the 4th of July or something in thereabouts, or they will go for a monumental defeat, because once the government does reopen, they are defeated. It doesn't matter. See, this is the whole problem right here. This is what they don't quite comprehend. The government will eventually open, whether it opens in February, March, or July, or next December. It will reopen, and the defeat will be there because the economic damage will be done. Many of these applications cannot be done, period. The Democrats always have more anxiety about prolonging a shutdown. That's according to Newt Gingrich. Well, there's no doubt about that. The Republicans honestly don't care. But they also tend to be the ones and are the ones that get the political damage out of it. And that's part of the problem right there. It is the political damage. From Anel Flores, furloughed mission systems engineer at NASA's Goddard Center in Greenbelt, Maryland, said, "Why do I need to put up with this nonsense when I've already done my duty?" And that's a question there. Resentment on the part of federal workers, Secret Service agents, others that are working. The prolonged shutdown is eroding morale in corners of the workforce has long enjoyed deep support. This is terrible. Included airport baggage screeners who have called in sick to protesters, border agents who are not also getting paid. I need to work just a few years to not need to downsize. We love our home. I am not willing to work a few more years. As from some person at the Border and Custom Protection worker in her 50s who works near the California border. She spoke on condition of anonymity. So in other words, what these people are doing, they're just stretching this out when they know that eventually the government will reopen and they will go back to work. And if they're in their 50s, they will work as long as they need be. I think the particular woman there, what she was doing, one person they interviewed here, was actually going to downsize their house. What has to happen, though, they have to get back to work because the financials involved. So this is where we are as we continue in the longest shutdown. Just 6% of civil servants are 30 years or younger. A trend started in the Obama administration, accelerated on the DJ Trump. Well, you have fewer young people there, and you have people that are in their 40s and 50s, and you have a very interesting situation. It's very hard to look a young professional in the eye and tell them not only are their talents aren't solely needed, but they want to find a rewarding career when they work, and dedication will be valued. That's from Professor Cooper of Oregon State University. Now let's move on here to a main item. The Representative King of Iowa. House Republicans moved to strip King of Iowa of his committee assignments over racist remarks. A panel of Republican leaders voted unanimously Monday to keep the veteran Steve King off of House committees. A firm rebuke of his influential opponent of illegal immigration. He calls it. The House Leader McCarthy of California said a decision by the Republican Steering Committee, which seats lawmakers on House committees following his recommendation, was meant to send a message to the GOP at large. This is not the party of Lincoln, he said of King's comments. It is definitely not. All American people are created equal in America, and we want to make a very strong stance. King was elected to his 9th term. That means he has been there, 18 years. Serves on the House Judiciary Committee, Agriculture Committee, and Small Business Committee. He won't be there now. The decision to effectively strip him of those posts came as Democrats pondered Rebecca from their own as a leading Republican across the party, spoke out against him. The leader in the Senate, McConnell, said there's no place in the Republican Party the Congress of the country for an ideology of racial supremacy of any kind. And Mitt Romney chimed in. He called for Willard Mitt Romney of Utah, a senator now, called for King to resign. The controversy was touched on when King asked in a New York Times interview published last week, white nationalism, white supremacy, Western civilization, how did that language become offensive? Well, King, Representative King, is just espousing an ideology that Bannon, when he was special advisor to D.J. Trump, was a part and parcel of. Nothing new there. King said in a statement said of the leader McCarthy's decision to remove me from committees is a political decision that ignores the truth. Ultimately, I told him, you have to do what you have to do, and I have to do what I have to do. King did not speak to reporters after leaving the hour-long meeting with McCarthy. House Democrats could bring up the measure condemning King as soon as Tuesday. James Clyburn, he's from South Carolina, the party's number 3. He's an African-American, and that says it all. Said he would introduce a resolution to disapproval of King's comments and condemn white nationalism and white supremacy in all of its forms. I'll invoke the words of another King, Dr. Martin Luther King, who, if he had been allowed to live, would have embraced his 90th birthday on a Tuesday. Oh, that's right. It's his birthday. He would counsel that we're going to be made to repent, not just from hateful words and deeds of bad people, but from appalling silence of good people. For Clyburn's reproach of King would have been similarly action taken against Joe Wilson, who shouted, "You're a liar." That was President Obama. They got the chance to do that. The assistant House Speaker Ben Ray Lujo of New Mexico, called King's comments brutally racist. Bobby Rush and separately filed resolutions to censor King. They can, in fact, censor him. They removed him from his House districts. He is a prominent member in the GOP, not only due to his controversy he is stroked, but also a former Judiciary subcommittee chair, a leader in opposing abortions. And this just basically tells you what these people are about. But members of both parties have become largely weary of repeating cycle of offense and outrage surrounding a King. Amongst them includes an opportunist named Lynn Cheney, the daughter of old Vice President Cheney, the chair of the Republican Conference, and Tim Scott. He's from South Carolina, the most prominent African American Republican in the Congress. One of there are 3, I forgot. Anyway, and the leader of the Anti-Defamation League called on Nancy Pelosi and McCarthy to censor him and remove him as a top Republican on the Judiciary Committee. He will be removed there. He'll not be the top Republican on the Judiciary Committee. Bobby Rush said in a serious response was warranted by King's repeated statements the U.S. Congress cannot be a platform for Steve King and those of his ilk from Charleston to Charlottesville to Chicago to California. There's no home for this behavior, especially on the floor of the House of Representatives. Well, you have it in the White House, so in other words, nothing is new. And there's a companion article here that the Republicans, with his inflammatory remarks, struggling with racism. They've been struggling, but because of the kind of leadership that they have, Meadows and all these characters, they're the kinds of people that condone this type of racism and extreme pro-corporatism. All these things are in here. Trump, no qualms about engaging in racially offensive comments of his own over the weekend involving the Wounded Knee Holocaust. Stop calling it a massacre, let's call it a Holocaust, which killed hundreds of Sioux Indians on the South Dakota reservation in 1890 to launch a political attack against Elizabeth Warren. This is silly. And the problem here is in tweets, Saturday night he marked Warren a potential candidate, over a live appearance on Insignia from her kitchen, during which she awkwardly announced that she was going to grab a beer as she spoke directly to her followers. Well, that's good. If Elizabeth Warren often referred to me as Pocahontas and did this commercial from the Bighorn or from Wounded Knee instead of her kitchen with her husband dressed in full Indian garb, it would have been a smash, he wrote there. Well, I'm surprised Trump doesn't appear in something like that. As a mascot, perhaps, for the Washington football team, which is now out of business, too. The tweet drew rebuffs from GOP senators who represent South Dakota. And the North American Congress of American Indians denounced Trump as, in the strongest possible terms, on behalf of the Rosebud Sioux tribe. I condemn Trump's racism and disrespectful tweet about a brutal incident in which an estimated 300, actually more, men, women, and children were rounded up and slaughtered. As from Rodney Barrex, the chair of the tribe. So this thing is getting around. I mean, King will bring these other characters down, no doubt about it. That's one of the things that happens. Let me just... Another conservative that's in hot water, this liar, his name was Jerome Kersey. He was a guy, the right wing of it, lied about President Obama's birth certificate. Now he's on the crosshairs, and his stepson is also on the crosshairs. They're being investigated by the Mr. Mueller and his investigation. So these characters are out there. Let me go to the, look at the time here, get to the LA school system and the strike out there, and then we'll do the sports. What to know as they prepare to strike on Monday. Well, they've already prepared. Oh, oops, it's the wrong one. Sorry about that. Monday has come and gone. Third Street Elementary will be open Monday, but it will hardly be business as usual. Hancock Park campus, teachers are expected to picket outside. This they will launch in Los Angeles. This is the Los Angeles time. The first strike in 30 years. Significantly fewer staffers in normal schools have been prepared to keep students together in larger spaces. Online education. The district has set up a strike hotline. It'll be open from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. That is Western time for parents to call. That number is 213-443-1300. Again, 213-443-1300. So this is part of the strike. 2/3 of students stayed away on the first day of the strike. About a third of the students showed up. That's on Monday in Los Angeles. The first day of the student strike. The district said 141,000 students came to campus based on preliminary data. 54 of the districts, the total enrollment in the district is 485,000. This is just a preliminary here. The mayor there, Eric Garcetti, said that no progress had been made. Negotiations to put a deal within reach. The impasse is disrupting the lives of too many kids and families. That's from the governor, Mr. Newsom. said in a statement, I strongly urge all parties to get together. The district also hopes a boost from the Los Angeles County supervisors who could vote on Tuesday and plan to give LA Unified up to $10 million for nurses and mental health. And this thing is not about money, it's about the students. We made our last proposal, that's from the Unified District, which was rejected. They walked away from the bargaining. This is the same old scheme that has happened time and time in various places, showing them standing in the rain. A food service worker here walked into 93rd Street Elementary School with her 11-year-old daughter. And in front of the campus here, Hines said that she doesn't have anyone to watch Naoma while she's at work. So she leaned on the school system, not just to educate her child, and many parents do this, as a place for the children to be, as a daycare, a drop-off for their children. Of course, they get to learn at the same time. And this is basically what is happening in Los Angeles, and very successful strike, no doubt about that. Taco truck feed striking students in Los Angeles. Oops. You always have a little bit of a problem here. Let me see, get back to the taco truck. Okay. Anyway, the taco truck is showed up, and some schools provide teachers with food. Victor Fernandez is one of the people that brought tacos there to various people with the internet. Oh, okay, he's with the International Socialist Organization, dressed in as a taco. Oh, this is a different person here. Not the fellow that I'm looking at here, but anyway, nonetheless. His tacos, nobody hates tacos. Oh, well, everybody gets in to the act. There's no doubt about that. And that's one of the things that happens these days is across the U.S., people look to these strikes here. Let's do the sports now. Syracuse 95-91 over Duke. That's college basketball. A little hard time finding that. To the NBA now. The Celtics were in Jersey. The Nets 109-102 for the Celts. The Grizzlies and Rockets in Houston. Rockets 112-94. The Hornets and Spurs in San Antonio. Spurs 108-93 for the Hornets. 108-93 for the Spurs. The Pistons out in Utah, the Jazz 100-94 for the Pistons. The Trailblazers and Kings, it was the Kings 115-107 for the Trailblazers. The Pelicans and Clippers in Los Angeles, it was the Pelicans 121-117. On to the hockey season. We'll get rid of the sound here. We'll try. Anyway, we finally got rid of it. The Avalanche and Maple Leafs, it was the Avalanche 6-3. The Blackhawks of Chicago and the Devils, it was the Devils 8-5. The Wild and Flyers, it was the Flyers. They flew by the Wild 7-4. The Blues of St. Louis and the Capitals, it was the Blues 4-1. The Canadiens and Bruins in Boston, and overtime going there, it was the Canadiens 3-2. The Sabres and Oilers, it was the Oilers 7-2 there. Thus, our episode, Mr. King of Iowa, on the 15th of January 2017 from WBRNRadio and on the Boston Red Network. This is Boston Red from the Jerry Pippin broadcast booth. Have a good day. We'll talk to you soon. We're working on several productions. One involves farmers and the Trump trade policies. We've been working on that. It's just about finished with it. We have an open source report, incidentally, on a WBRN and the Boston Red Network, where we talk about some predictions for 2019 in open source software, open source hardware, and even something how Windows 10 update destroyed some corporate servers and rendered their software invalid. Anyway, it's a wide report. We have it there. And we are getting one ready here on the Venezuelan president and his address to the Constituents Assembly there, Mundros, the Presidente Mundros. And we also, the political situation in Paris, we need to get that straight also. So a number of things sitting on the desktop, so to speak, here, as we work on our new media service.